my coaster, right?
What's that?
So that's my coaster.
I mean, there should be more than 2 of them in here somewhere.
Well, I mean, you put it wherever you sit, or rather than where you sit.
So we gotta fuck with the audio again. It went from slightly too quiet to fucking booming loud. So it was rough this last episode. So we gotta turn it back down. I was like, oh.
Why does it seem you have like 4 pages there?
There's like 6 pages there because they're double-sided, but let's see here.
I feel like that's a quite bit more than last time.
The font is maybe slightly bigger this time because I didn't try and adjust the font down so I could scrunch everything, so that might be it. Still probably not big enough for me to actually legibly read, and then my handwritten notes here that I cannot read at all.
Yeah, if you yourself can't read your own notes, I think you need to make an adjustment.
Welcome to the Desert Lair, episode 16. I'm Dustin, functional misanthrope. Dylan's here. He's a mostly functional nerd. So we skipped last week. The plan was originally to try and do these every week. I just don't have the time between everything going on. It doesn't help that you and I are not good at articulating our thoughts without a ton of filler words. I'm extremely OCD, so all those filler words annoy me, so I have to cut them out. It just takes a really long time to edit these. So an average hour-long episode, which is about what we run, has 650 edits. Roughly every 5 to 6 seconds, I have to edit something. It takes a long time. I would say best case scenario would probably be every other week. More realistically, probably every 3rd week. So episode, skip 2 weeks, episode. I'd like to do it more often than that, but I think that's probably more the realistic expectation at this point. Like I said, they take up too much time, and I don't have a lot of time to begin with, so we'll scale back, at least for the foreseeable future. So what we're talking about this week is the movie Zerograd. Before we get into that, we'll get into the news. It looks like there's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles VR game coming out. That looks kind of interesting. I don't have a VR set up. It's kind of always been something I've planned on, just never gotten around to. Kind of waiting for the technology and the price point to get there, and I don't feel like it's quite there yet.
Of all the VR games I've seen, nothing truly interests me to want to invest in all the VR stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a neat technology. I've used some of it, and it is really neat, but I agree, there's not really a whole lot. I mean, they remade Skyrim and I think Fallout 4, I want to say, in VR. And it's a neat concept, but I don't think I want to play those games in VR. Also, anything that I have to do standing for a game is immediately out the door. It's an immediate no. So if I can't play your game sitting down in the VR thing, like, it's just, the answer is no. I agree with you. There's not really a whole lot of VR games that look super interesting, and most of them are probably simulators. If you're going to get a VR headset, Microsoft Flight Simulator, F1 racing games, space simulator games, like those are the kinds of games you want VR for the most part. I do have something that isn't kind of entertainment media related, so I guess, do you have anything first?
they're reviving Malcolm in the Middle.
Really?
Bryan Cranston already said he's going to do it.
Malcolm in the Middle, I never watched all of that, but I would say as far as a sitcom goes, Malcolm in the Middle is really towards the top. It was funny, it was entertaining, a lot of it was relatable. So you've watched all of it, right?
Yeah, I've watched all of it.
I should probably watch all of it at some point in time. I definitely liked Malcolm in the Middle.
I saw an article about Cyberpunk. I think they're going to just call it 2. It's entering pre-production. I'm really curious where they're going to go with the story. As much as I enjoyed the mechanics and the gameplay of Cyberpunk, the story was just depressing. The story and the writers were like, "Yep, how much can we make like this depressing and just there is no good ending for literally anyone."
That's one of the things that I kind of enjoyed about it. Listen, I don't need every one of my stories to have some kind of happy or good or even amicable ending. I'm fine with every once in a while my art saying, listen, this is a shitty situation and there is no happy ending.
They doesn't need to be happy or the perfect ending, but I mean, it's just somewhat a little neutral. Nothing's better, but nothing's horribly worse, or no matter what I do, I'm screwed.
Personally, as an artistic choice, I actually appreciated that. It's nice sometimes to have a like, nope, it all sucks and it doesn't get better. It just gets worse. At this point, it's kind of too early to really speculate what they're going to do with it. These games take however many years to make, and then however many years after that to finish after they've released it. It's CD Projekt Red. I'm probably going to check out whatever they do no matter what. So the other news story that I want to talk about, Southwest Airlines. I'll read an article slightly condensed from the actual article. It's the last day to book a flight on Southwest Airlines without being hit with a fee to check bags after the airline abandoned a decades-long luggage policy that executives had described last fall as the key to differentiating the budget carrier from its rivals. Southwest had built years of advertising campaigns around its policy of letting passengers check up to 2 bags for free. The airline estimated in September that charging bag fees would bring in about $1.5 billion a year, but cost the airline $1.8 billion in lost business from customers who choose to fly Southwest because of its generous baggage allowance. These aren't the only changes at Southwest. The airline previously announced that it was leaving behind another Southwest tradition, the open boarding system it has used for more than 50 years. Southwest expects to begin operating flights with passengers in assigned seats next year. The airline also said last year that it would charge customers extra for more legroom and offer red-eye flights. Southwest has struggled recently and is under pressure from activist investors to boost profits and revenue. The airline reached a truce in October with hedge fund Elliott Investment Management to avoid a proxy fight, but Elliott won several seats on the company's board. The airline announced in February that it was eliminating 1,750 jobs, or more, or 15% of its corporate workforce, in the first major layoffs in the company's 53-year history. This is a perfect example of how investors and shareholders destroy a company. They fuck their customers, their employees, basically so they can bring every spare penny out of a business. It's an example of how not profit, but maximum profit is more important than anything else, including customer service and employee well-being, right? That's the bottom line. They're taking a thing that separated a business from all their competitors, stripping it away to make it like all the rest. Legroom seats. So they're not making planes bigger, and they're not removing seats from the plane. So if you add legroom seats, you're sardining people even more than they already were before. It said Southwest estimated a net loss from customers who specifically fly for the free bags, but investors don't see that. Here's what they see. We're not charging people for something that we could be charging them for. That's what they see. The first major layoffs in 53 years. Here's the thing. If you're laying off 1,750 people, you're either wildly inefficient as a business and or you have people doing just like meaningless, unnecessary work, or far more likely, you're going to overwork your current employees and reduce the quality and value of service that you provide as a company. Also, layoffs, they're usually short-term gain in stock price. Long-term, it almost always costs more to lay people off because you inevitably have to hire many of them back and then retrain, you know what I mean? There's a cost associated with that. It's a short-term boost in stock price, but in the long term, it hurts you. And also, 1,750 people have now lost their livelihood. So that, again, we can give every spare penny to investors. As the article points out, the leadership for Southwest is against this, but their hand has been forced by activist investors. The question becomes, where do we draw the line? At what point does it become unacceptable to fuck the majority of people who have to work, live, and operate in our society for the minority few? Capitalism as a system is fine, but like every other system, it requires checks and balances. Like you can't allow it to run rampant. How far are we from getting to the point where we have to add credit to our washing machines? This one, it kind of stood out to me just because I travel a lot for work and we use Southwest a lot just because I got to drag around a bunch of crap. And so the bag fees The problem is this is not a one-off, right? This is happening to every major company, every major business, this is what they're all doing, every one of them. It's not a one-off. It just, with Southwest, it's interesting because the leadership is fighting back and they've had such a long history of doing a thing, and investors have stepped in and said, you're not making a profit. We're going to completely destroy what you are as a business so that we can make a couple extra pennies. That's all I had for news. Before we get into this movie, I did watch one other movie, Legend of Tarzan from 2016. So this was another movie that I bought during Black Friday. It was cheap. It stars Alexander Skarsgård, Samuel L. Jackson, Margot Robbie, and it's a perfect example of how star power can't save your bad movie. This movie just has bad CG animals and then just a dumb plot. This feels like one of these, hey, we have this existing IP and let's throw some stars in it and then profit. And it's like, ugh, it just doesn't need to exist, really. It's directed by David Yates, who directed a bunch of Harry Potter movies. I don't know that I've seen more than maybe the first Harry Potter movie, but I have to assume that they're better than this movie is. So you've watched most of the Harry Potter movies, right?
I've watched all of them a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I assume they're decent movies, depending on how much you like Harry Potter and that kind of thing. But again, they all have to be better movies than this thing. Score, 2 stars. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. You know, there's a fair amount of action in it, and on a decent home theater, I guess you could be mindlessly entertained for a little while, but it's not recommended. Getting on to the movie we're talking about this time around, Zerograd, or Zero City, from 1988. Apologies in advance for all the Soviet names I'm going to butcher. Directed by Karan Shakhnazarov. Quick synopsis here. Everyman engineer Verikin travels to a remote city to give a factory new specifications for an air conditioning part. Nothing in the city quite makes sense, but everyone acts as if it does. He's quickly drawn into an investigation of the suicide, or possibly murder, of a local restaurant chef who may or may not be Verikin's missing father. So a couple things before we get into this movie. Visually, movie looks good. Restoration looks good on Blu-ray. I have the Blu-ray here. I especially like that first scene of the dreary long take of that train. This release is by Deaf Crocodile. So they're another distributor kind of similar to Arrow and Criterion. They try and release movies that were either never released in the US or people wouldn't have had an opportunity to see otherwise. Release looks good. There's one, I think, like a limited edition with a slipcover. I didn't pay the extra $5 to get that one. The second thing to talk about this movie is context. So this is a movie where kind of understanding the historical context and the context of the time period helps understand what they're trying to do with this movie. This movie was made in 1988 in the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union was on its way out. Mikhail Gorbachev took power in 1985. The Soviet Union was dissolved in 1991. Gorbachev believed in these Marxist-Leninist ideals, and he wanted to preserve the Soviet state, but he felt like reform was needed. So he withdrew troops from the Soviet-Afghan War, embarked on summits with Ronald Reagan to limit nuclear weapons and end the Cold War. He instituted policies of, again, forgive my pronunciation here, glasnost, which is openness, which allowed for enhanced freedom of speech and press, and perestroika, or restructuring, sought to decentralize economic decision-making to improve its efficiency. So Gorbachev described the Soviet Union as being in this state or being in this era of stagnation. Mostly economic stagnation from having a planned economy, and also he had the Cold War going on and this long ongoing Soviet-Afghan war. So he felt like the Soviet Union needed reform. So he instituted these policies of openness and restructuring to fix this era of stagnation. The reforms inadvertently led to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. There were cracks in the system, and these policies helped expose the cracks, and then the system fell apart. So, oops. The openness, however, allowed this movie to be made. So a few years before, like before 1985 especially, and before he instituted these policies, this movie would not have been made in the Soviet Union, right? It's not going to happen. It would have immediately been shut down. It's interesting that all of a sudden he has all these policies, and now they're a lot more loose. There's the freedom of press and all this freedom of expression and all this stuff going on. So you open the door to have a movie like Zerograd be made. This movie's an absurdist satire. It's Shock Nazarov's response to and feelings about not only socialism, bureaucracy, but also the policies of openness and restructuring. So movie opens up. You got one guy, Verikin, who's our main character. He's getting off the train. And again, you have this just long, dreary shot at the station. It's a great shot. I like it quite a bit. The city seems pretty empty. And again, he's like the only person getting off this train in this city. So the entire thing just seems empty. He's standing on the side of the road. There's no one else there. He hails a taxi. It seems empty. So he goes to this factory that he's visiting in the first failure of bureaucracy. He's supposed to be on the list to get in this factory. He's talking to the guy. The guy's not like, he's like, you're not on the list. First of all, how many people do you have coming to visit this factory? How many of those people are not supposed to be there? 0. So like, Verikin has to literally go and use the phone, make the phone call himself, talk to the person, and then the guy's like, all right, you can go through. Like, what is your job, dude? Like, you can't make the call yourself? Like, just all the bureaucracy, again, just, you can already see why he's, like, annoyed. So he walks in the building. He walks into this room. He finds the room he's supposed to be at, or the office he's supposed to be at. He opens the door and just immediately turns around and walks back out. And you're like, what? And then he walks back in, and then you see the secretary is just completely naked. Like, just stark naked, sitting at the desk, going on like nothing has happened. And you can see he's just like he's shocked, right? Like, he doesn't even know what to do. And then another guy comes walking out of the office behind him in the same room or whatever, the office that's in the door that leads to that office, walks by like nothing is amiss, just walks straight by. And then Verikin is like, you could tell he's like, what is going on here, right?
When I first saw it, I was like, okay, so is this going to be something with magic or some weird thing like where, it makes people where they don't notice something's wrong? So I was a little shocked, but I was like, okay, are we just going full blown, no one gives a shit?
Well, that's the awesome part. So finally the secretary is like, do you need something? And he kind of like, he snaps out of his stupor of like, what the fuck is going on in this place? And he's like, yeah, I'm here to see the president or the head of the company or whatever his job is. He goes through and like, he's sitting with this head of the company. He's talking to the guy, trying to get these ACs updated to whatever the new part is. And I like how the president's like, we make ACs for you? And he's like, yes, for the last 15 years.
Yeah, I was just like, there's nothing new to where it's like, you don't need to do any paperwork. It's so automated, or someone else does everything for you that you don't even know who your client is.
Yeah.
Like,
you've been making air conditioners for these people. Like, so you can tell Verikin's annoyed at this whole thing. And then at the same time, he's like, we asked you for something simple. We sent you everything you needed. And then you still asked us to come down. He's like, what more do you need? So the guy's like, all right, let's talk to the head engineer. Can't get a hold of the head engineer. Ask the secretary. And she's like, oh, he died. It's like, the head of the company doesn't even know that his chief engineer died.
yeah, I don't know. It's like, did someone not tell you that, oh, hey, he didn't show up for work? Why did he not show up for work? Like, wouldn't you know that? Like, especially as the head of the company and your chief engineer, like the head of your most important department is just not there anymore and you don't notice he's gone. Like,
the president of the company doesn't even know. And then he tells him, we'll get this sorted out. Come back in a couple of weeks. Like, this is a scathing criticism of bureaucratic incompetence.
yeah.
Like, this is just straight bureaucratic incompetence. Again, he stopped pulling this out of the void, right? This is coming from somewhere. It's a criticism of their governmental structure as a whole. And here's the thing. It's still relevant today, whether it's about the Soviet Union in 1988 or now. Like, you could apply the same criticism to virtually any kind of bureaucratic institution, more or less, and it would probably be accurate. He has this conversation. The guy tells him to come back in a couple weeks. Finally, he just can't help himself. He asks the guy, he's like, your secretary is naked, right? And the guy's like, what? And he's like, naked, like stark naked. She's not wearing clothes. And he's like, really? And so he gets up and goes to look after Verikan's like, go look. And he looks, he just closes the door and he's like, so she is.
One, you just don't care enough to actually mention it. Two, you never walked in or out of the office since that happened, so you didn't notice.
Like, it's the most awesome, absurd, like, it's just hilarious. The guy looks, he doesn't even notice she's naked, looks to see that she's naked, and his reaction is, oh yeah, you're right, she is naked. Like, what is going on in this place?
Right at that point, I was like, okay, so this movie's just going to be whatever it wants to do, and it's just completely not serious. We're going full comedy satire.
Yeah, it's an absurdist satire, and it does that quite well. So he walks out, and again, he looks over and sees that she's watering plants. And there's just this awesome moment of like, again, he's staring, right? He's just standing there in a stupor, like trying to absorb the complete absurdity of what's happening, and he just can't wrap his mind around it. He's just staring. Finally, he snaps out of it and leaves. And then he's on the phone with his friend. It doesn't tell us who he's on the phone with, a spouse, a friend, whatever, a family member, but he's like, you'll never believe what happened. Like, I'll tell you about it when I got back. He doesn't understand what's going on. It's almost too absurd to wrap your head around. It's just crazy. He decides before he leaves, he's going to go eat lunch at this restaurant. So he shows up at this restaurant, and already it's kind of odd because they're turning people away like in the middle of the day. There's a couple people in there eating, but shut the doors and they're going to go on break or something. Like maybe it's between a lunch and a dinner break, but it's just kind of weird. He orders his food, and the waiter asks him about dessert, and he's like, I don't want dessert. So they bring out the food. He finishes eating. The waiter brings out dessert anyway, and he's like, I didn't order dessert. He's annoyed. The waiter pulls the cloth off. It's a cake of his head.
Either you knew who this person was before. There's no way, since the guy came into the restaurant, he's done eating, you had time to make a cake like that. Type of thing takes days to make.
Yeah, a perfectly sculpted cake of his head. Like, it looks like him. And there's even these glass eyes in it that look super realistic. Like, it's the most awesome, like, it's just a super surreal scene, right? This cake. And of course, the waiter starts cutting into this cake, and Verikan's looking at it like, what in the fuck is this cake? Like, where did this, like, I'm not eating this. And then the waiter tells him sometimes a person just takes a liking to another person, and that's what happened in this case. Like, what are you talking about? It makes no sense. So then the picture behind them, in this massive picture on the wall, just suddenly rolls up into the ceiling and reveals this hidden compartment with this band, and the band just randomly starts playing this jazz music. And Verikan's like, I'm not eating this cake. And the waiter tells him, if you don't at least try a piece, the chef is going to kill himself.
I heard that and I was just like, so knowing what's going to happen, you don't get the guy professional help. You don't get suicide watch, like medical people, professionals involved. You're just like, nope, I'm going to let this slide. And knowingly, someone eventually is going to say, no, I don't want cake for whatever reason. So knowing this is going to happen. And yeah, the next scene is literally, go ahead.
So Verikan, infuriated, right? He's like, I'm not eating this cake. He throws down his money, gets up to leave, and sure enough, the chef shoots himself.
He pulls out a gun. No one tries to stop him. Like, no one says anything. It's like, oh, I told you it was going to happen. Now we get to watch. Like, because that's the appropriate response to someone trying to shoot themselves in the middle of a restaurant.
It's just this completely surreal, absurd scene. And it's like, it's filmed perfectly. You couldn't really get any more absurd than this. And then especially with the band playing in the background, this music, like the entire thing, it's an awesome scene. So he's back at the police station after this guy's committed suicide. The cop is almost like accusatorily. So he said he was going to kill himself if you didn't eat the cake, right? And Verikan's like, had I known this was going to happen, I would have ate the cake. Like, who would believe a guy's going to shoot himself because you didn't eat a piece of cake? Like, what? They're almost blaming him in a way. And he's like, what is going on in this place?
Honestly, for a second, I was like, with how absurd what's happened so far, are they going to arrest him and blame him for the murder of this guy? Like, I honestly thought that for a second. I was like, is he going to go to jail for murder?
Yeah, like you don't really know what's going to happen because it's just so absurd at this point. It could kind of go in any direction. He decides he needs to get out of this place. So he goes to buy a train ticket. They're all sold out. It's like, he's the only person who came to this town. Like, how could they possibly be sold out?
Maybe just no one ever leaves our town. So why would we need an actual schedule a train to leave the town?
Yeah, I mean, you would presumably trains would stop along the way, but yeah, so there's no train ticket. He flags down a taxi and he asks the taxi like if there's another train station, and the taxi's like, sure. He has the taxi drive him to this next train station. Well, they get so far and there's this sign and he's like, I can't go any further. You're going to have to walk from here.
I'm just like, this is like, what? Like,
yeah, so the entire thing is just nuts. So he starts walking. He walks to exactly where he's supposed to go. It's literally a dead end. Like it's bushes grown over of a dead end. The guy drove him out into the middle of nowhere. He can't get back. He can't walk back to the city. It's too far. So he starts wandering through the woods, just trying to find anything. And he sees some lights. So he ends up at this museum. And he walks in and he finds this museum curator and he's like, how do I get back to town? And the guy's like, well, you can't really get back to town. He's like, but there's this woman and sometimes she drives to town in the evening. So he calls her and says, hey, can you give him a ride? So he kind of sets this guy up. He helps him out. But in the meantime, he's like, why don't you take a tour of our museum? And of course, Farrakhan, he's not interested in this right now. This entire debacle is wearing on him. But he feels kind of obligated, right? The guy kind of guilt trips into him a little bit. So the guy tried to help him, and Farrakhan's like, all right, I'll take this tour. So they go down into the museum. It's like this old mine shaft or something. They drop down into this subterranean museum. Turns out there's all these dioramas of just this absurd history, right? Like, it's completely nuts. So there's like Trojans, rock and roll, and all these events. And a lot of these events actually happen, but the town has twisted it to where they happened in their town. Almost like their town is the center of the world. And the first one they go to, he questions it because the guy tells him like, here's where the Trojans escaped north. And he's like, what? He's like, how did Trojans make it here? The guy kind of just shakes him off. He's like, oh, this happened, right? And so at this point, for the rest of it, Farrakhan's basically just silent. He questions the one thing, and at that point, he doesn't question anything more. Like, first of all, the guy's trying to help him. So kind of out of politeness and just social etiquette, he doesn't want to argue with the guy. Also, where would you even start that argument at that point? How are you going to argue with the museum curator of like, everything you have here and everything you believe about all the stuff here is a lie? You're not really going to have that argument. That goes nowhere. Farrakhan, again, he's just dumbfounded at all this stuff. He's speechless. He doesn't even know what to say. He literally is just quiet the entire rest of the time walking around. I also like how when they first walk in, there's a poster on the wall, and it says, the source of our strength lies in historic truths. It's just completely contradictory to what he's seeing there. So this scene is extremely important commentary about historical revisionism, specifically distortionist revisionism, which is also known as negationism. So a definition here of negationism refers to the denial or distortion of established historical events, particularly when those events are generally accepted by the historical community. It's a form of historical revisionism, but with a distinct connotation, often implying a deliberate manipulation of facts for political or ideological reasons. This is a hallmark of totalitarian governments. The single-party socialist government of the Soviet Union, communist China, fascist Germany, North Korea and their functional dictatorship, and many others. They literally rewrite history to fit their own narrative, either by complete falsehoods or distortion of actual events, which is what they've done here. Denialism and and or just destroying or censoring records, like all these things. Donald Trump literally makes up whatever he wants. A recent example, like when he said, Ukraine shouldn't have started the war. Like, what? No, I think Russia started the war when they marched 100,000 plus troops over the border of Ukraine, right? It's the same thing. It's historical distortionism. Again, it's a hallmark of totalitarian governments. This movie, though, it takes a lighter approach to this. So it's definitely unsettling, like walking through and seeing all this stuff it's unsettling to the character. It's unsettling to the audience, but it's still done in a comedic way. It's still funny as you're watching it. And nothing, at least, comes across as like overtly malicious about it. It's still kind of lighthearted, but the implications of negationism are definitely still present in this.
There's one where it's like, this is the bed that Attila the Hun used to rape someone. And using his DNA, we made a facsimile of what he would look like. And it's just like, the detail was, how much liberty are you taking with this? It's like, you can't get like intimate facial details from a DNA sample. It's like, you can get the basic ethnicity and it's like intimately detailed of like what his facial hair looked like. It's like, what?
The scene is great because they're supposed to be these dioramas of wax figures, but they're actually actors, like just have makeup caked on and they're standing as perfectly still as they can. So the entire thing is just uncanny. It's this uncanny valley, unsettling environment with all of this stuff. So it's a lot of fun to kind of watch this scene walking around. Can you imagine being on the set here with all these people and like they just cake the makeup on and set you all up in these dioramas and you're just standing there completely as still as possible? And then it culminates in just these giant spinning dioramas of people on them. It's just a really neat scene that they built with this thing. It is a fun scene, but I do feel like it kind of drags on maybe a little long. Like they could have axed a couple of these things and kind of sped it up a bit. The lady that's supposed to give him a ride doesn't show up. So the curator kind of sets him up with a kind of local electrician, I think it was, or something, like to stay the night at this guy's house. He's sitting there eating dinner with him, and they kind of walk away, and he's sitting there with the guy's kid. And the guy's kid tells him, "You'll never leave this town." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "You'll never leave this town." And then he tells him, like, his date of birth, and then all the kids he's going to have, and then the day he's going to die. Like, it's just a really unsettling scene. And you're like, is this kid, like, possessed or something? Like, what the fuck is going on? It's really unsettling, but it's still kind of a fun scene of just, man, this is kind of creepy almost. So his ride, the woman comes to pick him up. He was going to stay the night, but I guess she shows up. She had a flat tire or something. And they're leaving, but as they're driving to town, they're intercepted by the police again. And the police take him to the police station. And it turns out they found evidence that he's the chef's son.
He's so mind blown. He's like, wait, what?
He's like it's completely ridiculous, right? He's like, there's no way. And they pull out a picture of him that the guy has that was signed in his handwriting and stuff. Like, he's in the fucking Twilight Zone at this point.
Yeah, I was just like, this is getting more and more absurd.
Again, it's kind of unsettling, but it's funny at the same time. How far down the rabbit hole are we going to send this poor guy at this point? So he tells him, like, there has to be some kind of mistake. I don't know this guy. He's definitely not my father. I've never met him. And he's like, maybe, you met him at some point in time, like, and you don't remember. He's like, no. So he's like, well, tomorrow go talk to the town prosecutor. So he goes to see this town prosecutor, and he's trying to explain to this guy. The town prosecutor comes up with some kind of, like, super elaborate way that this guy didn't commit suicide, but he was in fact murdered, and you could be a witness to this, so you can't leave. It gets even more ridiculous. And then the best part of it is this guy gives him this patriotic speech, this prosecutor. He tells him, like, you have to sacrifice your individuality for the greater good. But because of that, you're rewarded 100 times fold. That's kind of this Soviet socialist mentality. So Verikin kind of is like, all right, well, what do I have to do? I want to be an upstanding citizen. So he asks him what he has to do. And he tells him, the only thing I need you to do is if someone asks, don't deny that you're the chef's son. literally, in order for you to do your duty, you have to give up your own identity and participate in this farce. That's what he's telling him. Not only is the system trying to rewrite history, but the government is literally trying to reprogram its citizens to fit into this false history that they've created. We're veering into George Orwell 1984 territory at this point. It's an interesting what he's trying to say here with this stuff. So it turns out the chef was this town folk hero. He was the first guy to embrace rock and roll. And the entire town is like involved in this rock and roll movement. So the chef was like a martyr for this movement. So he had the band, like they were playing waltz music, or they were having a waltz. And he had the band play rock and roll music, and we danced to it. And so the prosecutor kicked him out of the youth league, or, you know, whatever the government endorsed social organization was, I forget. So he's the martyr for this movement. And now, because he's the chef's son, he's kind of like a celebrity almost at this point. It's interesting because the prosecutor kind of represents this old Soviet government. And the townspeople are operating under this new, freer form of government brought about by Gorbachev and his policies of openness and restructuring. So they're at this town gathering to honor the chef. And because everyone believes Verikin is his son, they want him to speak on his behalf or on his honor or whatever. And he's like, what am I supposed to say about a man that I literally don't even know? But there's hostility here because the prosecutor, who again represents this old Soviet government, is like, there's no way that the chef could have killed himself. He didn't have the guts for that kind of sacrifice. He gets up on stage and he's like, I'll show you how it's done. And he tries to kill himself and can't. So he has everything he needs. He has the gun. He has the ammunition. It's loaded. He cocks the hammer back. He pulls the trigger. Nothing happens. So he double checks the gun. It's loaded. He reloads it, cocks the hammer again, pulls the trigger, nothing. Pulls the trigger, nothing. And no matter how many times he does it, it's the same result. Again, this is an allegory of this bureaucratic incompetence on the part of the old Soviet government. He has all the pieces in place. He has everything that he needs, but inexplicably, he still can't get the job done.
I mean, at this point, the movie is just ridiculous. But again, everyone in the audience is watching this guy on stage trying to kill himself repeatedly. Like literally, after he tries the first time, he takes the gun away from his head and is like trying to check it to make sure it works.
No one tackles him.
No one does anything. It's almost like they're watching like a spectacle of like, oh, you're gonna show us some cool magic trick, right? It's like everyone's is like almost like looking forward to for him to kill himself. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I think it's one of like, it's almost like, oh, you're gonna kill yourself so we don't have to listen to your crap anymore. Yes, go right ahead, do it.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of the movie, again, it's completely ridiculous and absurd. But as an allegory for the bureaucratic incompetence of the Soviet government, it makes a lot of sense. You have literally everything that you need to get something done, and you can't get it done. At the end, it's just embarrassing and sad. That's how this scene plays out. After he fails multiple times and just kind of runs away in shame. But signals the end of the old Soviet government. The prosecutor who represents that, he's lost most of his power and his relevance at this point after this debacle. So Verikin, they're back at his hotel. And again, we have another absurd scene. He's at his hotel and literally, it seems like the entire town just shows up.
Yeah, I was just like, how many people are going to fit in this small ass room?
Like one after another, all these people just keep showing up. The prosecutor, these random girls who think he's a celebrity and want to hang out with him. The chef's girlfriend who drank poison or acid and tried to kill herself and now she can't speak and, you know, she didn't die. And like all these people show up. The town mayor shows up. During all of this, the entire movie, Verikin, the actor, his facial expressions are just perfect. And in this scene, he just looks defeated.
He really does. He's like, if everyone's goal was to wear me down to where I give up and I don't want to, like, why do I keep trying to leave? If everyone's goal is just make it seem like I'm never going to freaking leave.
Like it just seems hopeless. And he doesn't even have to say anything. Just his facial expression portrays this so perfectly of just like, I'm defeated. Like, you've beaten me. But he does try one last time to talk to the mayor. He tries to tell him, like, let me just have a conversation with you. Let me just talk to you. And the mayor's like, sure, what do you want to talk about? And he's like, he's looking around at the 20 people in this room, and he's like, can we just have a conversation in private? And the guy's like, sure, let's talk about whatever you want. And he's like, in private, like, can we go out in the hallway? And the mayor's literally just staring at him, like, not even acknowledging almost what he's saying. So again, he's just beaten at this point. He's broken. Somehow they all decide they're going to go to like this town tree or something. Again, it's this absurd, ridiculous town history of this tree or some ritual. I don't know what's involved. It's all nonsense. Again, he's kind of participating in this debacle. Interestingly, it's the prosecutor, the guy who represents this old government, who kind of recognizes like he doesn't belong here. And so he tells him, run away. But of course, he doesn't tell him where to run to or give him any kind of direction or help about how he's supposed to get away or what he's supposed to do when he runs away. He doesn't have an answer for him. So Verikan runs away and he ends up at this lake in the middle of the woods. He sees this boat and he just kind of jumps in the boat. But it's like, where is he really going to go? Like, he's just going to kind of float to the middle of this lake, and ultimately he's still stuck here. So it's like the prosecutor recognizes that he doesn't belong here and gives him an opportunity to escape, but there's nowhere for him to escape to at this point. I also think it's interesting. Remember at the beginning of the movie that the secretary said that the head engineer drowned in a river. So he's not at the river, he's in a lake. But to me, I kind of interpret this as the head engineer also, out of necessity, would have had to have been kind of a more logical, kind of straightforward thinking person. And that's also what Verikan is. Verikan is an engineer. He represents his company. And so the thought is like, maybe this engineer who was this logical person and part of the old system got sucked into all this new policy of openness and all this new rock and roll stuff that's going on in the town, and he didn't fit in. And so he literally just died. Like, he doesn't fit in anywhere, and he died. And so you do kind of wonder, like, is this Verikan's fate as well? Like, he's this logical thinking everyman that's part of the old system, and just all this new stuff that's happening. Is he going to die because he also doesn't fit in? I like the ending to this movie. I think it works pretty well with this movie specifically. It just, again, he's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, where is he going to go?
Yeah, I agree. It kind of shows, okay, you're really trying to escape, but you realize, like, where are you going to go to? When the route out of town itself is, like, covered with almost, like, some, like, conspiracy or something is completely against you, so you can't leave.
Yeah. Like, there's no tickets to buy a train, a taxi can't drive out of town. Like, he's literally just stuck. One thing I do want to point out about this is that the director, Shak Nazarov, he isn't just critical of this old Soviet government. He doesn't portray the circumstances of this new government in the best light either. The old system is this bureaucratic failure, and it participated in this historical distortion, and, people are oppressed under it, but the new system, it has its own kind of crazy nonsense. Verikan just gets swept up into the absurdity of it all. The old system's clearly bad, but the new system has its own problems as well. Scores for this movie? I'm going to give this one 4 stars. Despite what this movie has to say, how important its message is, and it's a timeless message, really, about human society and government and all that, it does still need to be entertaining. I think the movie is entertaining, but probably more so in the first part of it. I think the first part of this movie is like laugh out loud funny. All the scenes of like the nakedness and the scenes with the head of the company and the scenes at the restaurant with the cake head and the band, like all that stuff is legitimately really funny, I thought. As the movie progresses, though, it kind of goes from this absurdly funny to kind of a bit more like serious and unsettling. And it's still funny, but not quite at the same level of funny, in my opinion, that the first part of the movie was. It's still entertaining, but just maybe not to the extent that the first part was. And I do feel like it kind of drags a little bit, maybe in a few scenes. So 4 stars.
I agree with most of what you said. Like, yeah, the first part, like first scenes in the movie were just hilarious level, just way over the top. And then it tries to like, it would still be funny, but it just got more serious. And I feel like it tried to change the tone. And I don't know, I didn't like that part as much. And I feel like, okay, if you want to change the tone, and it just felt like by a tone change, like you said, it dragged out some scenes and it just kind of felt boring sometimes of just like, okay, the scene is dragging on. Oh, like, can we get to the next one to like show a point? Yeah, I didn't like it as much as you did, so I gave it a 3. I thought it was decent. It's just the tonal change. And I feel like, okay, you want to go from hilarious over the top to try and be more serious, and it just felt like the more serious part you just made boring, and it wasn't like you didn't wrap up the point of your movie as well as you could have.
Yeah. So again, no matter how important a movie is or its message is, it does still need to be entertaining. Personally, I thought it was still entertaining, but I definitely agree that the tonal shift from just the complete over the top absurdity and the funniness of that, it loses that in the rest of the movie. And it's still funny. There are still funny scenes, but they're not laugh out loud funny. So I definitely see that point. So before we end this, I do want to discuss Mosfilm and the director Shak Nazarov. This movie is produced by Mosfilm. Mosfilm is a film studio in Moscow, which is among the largest and oldest in the Russian Federation and in Europe. Founded in 1924 in the USSR as a production unit of that nation's film monopoly, its output includes most of the most widely acclaimed Soviet-era films. In 1998, Shak Nazarov, again, the director of this movie, he became the director general of Mosfilm. Interestingly, again, about Shak Nazarov, he's a supporter of Putin. You kind of have to ask yourself, has he cozied up to Putin purely out of self-preservation? Or does he maybe agree with some of the things Putin has done? Clearly, by the virtue of his movies, he's critical of the kind of regime that Putin represents. It doesn't necessarily mean he disagrees with it, with all of it at least, but is it all a front out of self-preservation? It's hard to say. I would posit that people are complex and their motivations are not always straightforward, especially people who make art are oftentimes nuanced individuals.
And like you said in the movie, scathing criticism of the old way, but I mean, the new way has its problems too.
Again, it's more interesting context for this film because this guy, he's obviously critical of the system. And he made a film that would not have been able to have been made under the old Soviet system, but he's cozied up again to a person whose regime his movies are kind of critical of. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think next round we'll actually watch another one of these Deaf Crocodile releases because I bought another one. It's also another Russian film. I'm pretty sure it's by Mosfilm. It's called Kinzaza. That's all I have for this one. You got anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Later, man.
Yep.
I didn't think I'd put a single movie we watched so far above 4.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's fair. You don't watch movies as often, and
This train had to get here somehow, so it's like, could you just use the tracks to get out of town?
they like steal a car and drive over If we order parts from this factory, like the parts have to get to my town. Like I'm going to stow away in a truck or something.
I do like how you brought up his face. I was like, I was going to bring that up. In the room where it's just like, he looks so ugly. I'm done with this. Like, I give up. Like, the actor just perfectly betrayed his face.